I never believed in ghosts. I believed in logic. I believed in facts. But that changed the night I moved into room 402 of the West End Dormitory. It was a cheap building, old and gray. The air inside smelled like wet paper and cold copper. The warden was a thin man with eyes that never blinked. He handed me the key and said only one thing: do not open the window after midnight, no matter who knocks from the outside. I laughed. We were on the 4th floor. Who could possibly knock on a window 4 stories up? My roommate was already there when I arrived. His name was Elias. He was sitting on his bed, staring at the wall. He didn't say hello. He didn't even look at me. He just pointed to the bed across from him. I noticed something strange immediately. Elias had no luggage, no books, no clothes, just a small, wooden box tucked under his pillow. That first night, the silence was heavy. At exactly 12:05 a.m., I heard it. Tup, tup, tup. It was a soft sound. It was coming from the window. My heart skipped a beat. I remembered the warden's words. I stayed under my blanket, frozen. The knocking started again, but louder this time. Thud, thud, thud. I looked over at Elias. He wasn't sleeping. He was standing in the middle of the room, facing the window. His back was arched at an unnatural angle. He started whispering in a language I didn't understand. It sounded like wet sand rubbing together. Suddenly, Elias turned his head. He didn't move his body, just his head. It rotated 180 degrees to face me. His eyes were gone. Where his eyes should have been, there were only 2 deep, bleeding holes. He smiled, and I saw that his teeth were sharpened into points. He wants to come in, Elias whispered, but he needs a new skin first. Before I could scream, the window glass began to crack. Not from the outside, but from the inside. Something was trying to get out of our room. What is inside that wooden box under the pillow? And why did the warden look at me like I was already dead? I didn't sleep. I couldn't. I spent the rest of the night huddled in the corner of my bed, watching Elias. He didn't move. He stayed in that twisted position, his empty eye sockets staring at the cracked window until the sun came up. When the first light hit the room, he suddenly snapped back to normal. He looked like a regular student again. He even smiled and said, "Good morning, roomie." I wanted to run. I wanted to tell the warden, but my legs felt heavy, like they were made of lead. I watched Elias leave for class, but he left the wooden box behind. It was sitting right there on his pillow. The curiosity was a poison. I had to know what was inside. I walked over to his bed. The air around the box was freezing. It felt like sticking my hand into a freezer. I reached out and touched the wood. It wasn't wood. It felt like dried skin, rough, leathery, and warm. I flipped the latch. Inside the box was a human ear. It was fresh. Blood was still dripping from the lobe. Beside the ear was a small silver needle and a long string made of human hair. My stomach turned. I slammed the box shut. Suddenly, the door behind me creaked open. It was the warden. He wasn't smiling. He was holding a mop and a bucket of red liquid. "I told you not to look," he whispered. His voice sounded like gravel. "Now you've shared the secret. And the secret doesn't like to be shared." I backed away, tripping over my own feet. "What is this? What is Elias doing?" The warden stepped closer. His eyes finally blinked, but they blinked sideways, like a reptile. "Elias isn't doing anything. Elias died in this room 10 years ago. He fell from that window. Or maybe he was pushed." I looked at the bed. The box was gone. Elias was gone. The room was empty, covered in dust and cobwebs. It looked like nobody had lived here for a decade. But I could still smell the wet copper. I could still hear the tup, tup, tup. I looked at my own hands. My fingernails were turning black. A sharp pain shot through my chest. When I pulled up my shirt, I saw it. Stitches. There were black, hairy stitches running across my stomach, as if someone had opened me up and sewn me back together while I was asleep. The warden pointed to the window. "He's coming back tonight." And he brought the needle. Who is the he the warden is talking about? And why am I starting to feel like my own skin doesn't belong to me anymore? The sun began to set. The sky turned a bruised purple. I tried to leave the room, but the door wouldn't budge. It wasn't locked. It was fused to the wall. The handle was gone. I was trapped in room 402. As the shadows grew longer, I felt a tugging sensation in my stomach. The stitches were moving. They were crawling under my skin like worms. Each movement was a white-hot flash of agony. I fell to the floor, gasping for air. Then, the box reappeared in the center of the room. It started to grow. It grew until it was the size of a coffin. The lid began to slide open, slowly, inch by inch. A pale, gray hand reached out. The fingers were impossibly long, with extra joints that cracked like dry sticks. Before we see what is inside that coffin, you need to listen carefully. If you are feeling the chill down your spine, hit that subscribe button and turn on the notification bell. In this channel, we dive deep into the darkest corners of the Pinoy creepypasta world. You don't want to miss the ending of this story, because what happens next is something you can never unsee. Stay tuned. The worst is yet to come. The thing inside the coffin sat up. It had no face, just a smooth surface of pale skin. But in its hand, it held a giant silver needle. The same needle from the box. "Identity is a gift," the faceless man whispered. His voice didn't come from a mouth. It came from inside my own head. "But I need a face to walk among the living. Yours will do perfectly." He began to crawl toward me. He didn't walk. He slid across the floor like a snake. Every time he moved, the stitches in my stomach pulled tighter. I felt my skin beginning to peel away from my muscles. It felt like being burned alive, but slowly. I looked at the window. The glass was gone. Outside, there was no campus. There was only a black void. And in that void, hundreds of faces were floating, all of them screaming without sound. "Don't worry," the faceless man said, raising the needle. "You won't die. You'll just become part of the collection." He reached out and grabbed my jaw. His grip was like iron. He positioned the needle right at the corner of my eye. The needle pierced the skin near my tear duct. It was a cold, sharp intrusion. I tried to scream, but my vocal cords felt like they were being tied into knots. The faceless man didn't flinch. He began to sew. He was stitching his own empty, gray head to the edges of my living face. Every time the needle went through my flesh, I felt my memories flickering. I saw my mother, my childhood home, my first day of college, and then, like a candle being blown out, those memories turned to ash. He wasn't just stealing my skin. He was consuming my soul. The pain was no longer just a physical sensation. It was a rhythmic thumping in my brain. Tup, tup, tup. The sound of the knocking was now coming from inside my skull. I looked into the mirror on the wardrobe door. My reflection was shifting. One half of my face was still mine, bloody, sweating, and terrified. The other half was a smooth, featureless mask of gray flesh, held together by thick, black human hair thread. The faceless man leaned in close, his cold breath smelling like a grave. "The others before you fought," he hissed. "But they all ended up the same. Look under the floorboards, boy. Look at what the warden has been hiding for 50 years. Using the last of my strength, I kicked at the loose wood near the bed. The boards splintered easily. Underneath wasn't dirt or pipes. It was a pile of discarded parts. Dozens of human faces, dried and flattened like leather, lay stacked in the dark. Some were decades old. Others looked fresh, still wet with tears. Suddenly, the door to the room vanished completely. There was no hallway anymore. There was only the faceless man, the needle, and the pile of stolen identities. I realized then that the warden wasn't protecting the students. He was the farmer, and we were the harvest. My skin began to sag. It felt like it was melting off my bones, sliding toward the gray creature. I was becoming the faceless man, and he was becoming me. "Just one more stitch," he whispered, aiming the needle at my throat. "And you will be the one who knocks on the window for the next student." The truth is about to be revealed. The ending is not a rescue. It is a nightmare you can never escape. The needle pushed through my throat. I felt the thick, hairy thread pull my skin tight against the faceless man's cold skull. The transformation was complete. I tried to scream, but my mouth was sewn shut. I looked into the mirror one last time. I didn't see myself. I saw a smooth, gray surface where my face used to be. Beside me, the creature stood up. It was wearing my clothes. It had my eyes, my hair, and my voice. It looked down at me and smiled. A perfect, human smile. "Thank you for the life," the creature said. Its voice was exactly like mine. "I think I'll go to class now. I hear there's a new student moving into room 403 tomorrow." The creature walked toward the wall where the door used to be. A door appeared, opened, and he stepped through, whistling a tune my mother used to sing to me. The door slammed shut and vanished. I was alone in the dark. The room began to shrink. The walls pressed in, smelling of old blood and wet copper. I felt a sudden, violent pull. My body, what was left of it, was sucked into the wooden box on the bed. I was no longer a person. I was a part Time lost all meaning. It felt like centuries of suffocating silence. Then, I heard a sound. Tup, tup, tup. Light flooded into the box. I was looking through the wood grain. I saw a new student. He was young, nervous, and carrying a heavy backpack. He looked exactly like I did on my first day. The warden was standing behind him, holding a key. "Do not open the window after midnight," the warden whispered to the new boy. I tried to warn him. I tried to bang against the wood of the box. But all that came out was a soft, rhythmic sound. Tup, tup, tup. The boy looked at the window. He looked at the bed. Then, he looked at the wooden box tucked under his pillow. He reached out his hand, his fingers trembling with curiosity. "Is someone there?" the boy asked. I realized with a jolt of pure horror that I wasn't just in the box. I was the knocking. I was the shadow. I was the warning that no one ever listens to. The cycle was starting again. And somewhere, in another room, the faceless man was already sharpening a new needle. The box clicked open. The boy screamed.